Welcome. This is Octavia, Faith, and Raheem with a guided rest practice for leaders who are on their journey to becoming more devoted to rest. You can engage this practice while sitting up or laying down. You can keep your eyes open. You can also close them too. Either way, soften your gaze, notice your breath, and let's begin. I like to ask, um, what, if any, part of you is most in need of rest, or you could think about it in terms of what part of you would appreciate some rest right now. And then
Mhm.
we'll rest together if that sounds good to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Um, I've been exploring my spiritual side more. And actually, I think this is where I would like to rest. Yeah.
So is there like, are you saying your spirit would like to rest?
Yes. Yes.
Ooh,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I it's there are I think what yoga nidra and like some of these rest practices has kind of awakened for me is just like part of listening to intuition also means like tapping into um both like my soul and the inner ways of knowing and being, but also like what I know to be true, that there are guides and spirits that are here, right? And that are holding me.
Mm,
And I think before, up until a few years ago, Octavia, like honestly, I was very not tuned into that. I was, if anything, I was like, okay, that's some woo-woo, and I'm just not about that. And recently I found out that my father, who's a scientist, and we did not grow up in any sort of formalized religion, which again, growing up in Alabama, you can imagine that was kind
mhm,
of uh different as a for a kid, where your friends are every Sunday, at church. And so um I just had always assumed like, okay, like my parents are atheists, like we
mhm,
didn't grow up with that kind of formal religion. But I found out recently, I was asking my dad, he has this morning ritual where he prays to a photo of his mom and his dad, my
mhm,
grandparents. It's
mhm,
the photos in the middle of our mantle in my childhood home where my parents still live. And I remember seeing him do that all the time. And I have this like vague memory of watching my grandmother prepare food every morning for an altar that she had for her husband, my grandfather, who passed before she did, and also other ancestors. And I remember, I mean, I like vividly remember this. So recently I asked my dad, I was like, when you pray, like, what are you praying? What are you saying to your parents?
mm,
And every morning he goes through every single family member who is alive. So my brother, his whole family, me, my boyfriend, my mom, and him, and provides an update. And I'm saying, like, a life update. Like, Miho went to college here. She went into education every morning. If I have an upcoming trip, he asks for protection. And it
mm.
takes about 5 minutes, and he repeats it every morning. And I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is a scientist who starts his morning. I mean, you can have all the stereotypes of a scientist, very rational, very data driven, who starts his morning talking to his parents who have passed physically, right? And so I've gotten very curious now about what how spirituality can show up in my life.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not even spiritual rest I'm looking for, but it's to awaken kind of the
Yes.
spiritual side in me. That's probably what
Mm.
I'm asking for.
Okay. So first, thank you for sharing that really beautiful, it feels tender to me what you
Yeah.
shared about your dad um and it feels tender and beautiful and like a really meaningful,
Hmm.
also practical way to just he's continuing to remember whose he is.
Yes.
And also, like, just that there's a dialogue. I just think that's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Um, and I consider this part of the rest practice, right? Like I always
Yeah.
say, the rest practice begins like when we start to prepare for it. And I asked you a question and that we stepped into the preparation for it. And what I can say is you re-sharing that story of your dad. Notice what's happening inside of you right now.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, and then you said, okay. And the reason why I asked a little bit more, because I was like, spiritual rest, is there fatigue? Meaning like sometimes we can go like, I'm doing all of these practices,
Right.
like all these things are happening, and I feel a little afraid around that. Like I'm doing so much spiritual work that it
Mm-hmm.
it does feel fatiguing. And then when you said awakening to, I'm so glad I followed up because as you started talking, I was like, oh yeah, your curiosity is already awake, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And then your dad has offered up a practice that he began that it might even be, and you said your grandmother, you saw her do that
Mm-hmm.
practice, and then there might already be something that you do that's similar that you haven't
Mm-hmm.
connected the dot around.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could just rest in that awareness that you are being held by much that is seen and also unseen. So,
Yes.
with that, if you'd like to, you can keep the camera on, you can turn it off,
Yeah.
um, you can sit in your chair, or you can put your head down. Whatever you want to do, we'll be together for about 5 more minutes. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
I am gonna go off camera. I'm gonna go lay down because this is
Okay.
this is this is how I love to do work with you, Octavia. So I'm gonna go off camera, but I'm listening. So
Yes. So take your time. Go ahead. Yes, I was going to say if you wanted to go off camera in that way. And so preparing to lay our bodies down, whether that's going to be on a couch or in the bed, or if you make a rest nest, that's a rest practice. And as always, I start by inviting you to be aware of the support beneath you was quite literally holding the body. And can you get 1% more comfortable? And then to that 1%, can we add 1 more percent of comfort? And then notice the physical body. And if there's any place in the physical body that would appreciate a little more support, a blanket, a cover, a pillow. Be aware of where the backside of the body touches the floor, the ground, the earth, and where the floor, the ground, the earth touches the backside of the body. Release 1% more tension or tightness. And then notice the breath, the rise and fall, the ebb and flow. Be aware of the breath and how it can touch us in places that nothing else can, nothing except for grace can touch us in the places that the breath can reach. And the breath is a bridge between the seen, the seen and the unseen. Begin to count the breath down and backwards, starting with the number 10. And that counting is internal and silent. And on the inhale, you'll silently say 10. And on the exhale, silently say 10. Inhale 9, exhale 9. And just sensing, knowing, trusting that with every breath, you let go of a layer of tension, a layer of tightness, a layer of doubt. If you lose your place in the counting, you can start back at the number 10. And then wherever you are in the counting, you let the counting go. And then sense a circle of protection. Begin to draw a circle of protection around the body. And that circle, let it be an element. It might be moonlight, it might be trees, it might be blue light, it might be water, it might be medicinal flowers. Just sense that a circle of protection that includes an element that is protective to you begins to form around you. And notice the softening that comes once that circle is drawn. And since the ask or desire was a spiritual awakening, my next invitation, and this a really gentle invitation that you can accept or save for later. You can accept it now or save it for later, is to bring to heart or mind someone in your lineage who you have a benevolent relationship with who is no longer here. And to remember their name, their face, a story you've heard about them, the way their voice sounded, their touch, any smells. And then to, in your own way, say thank you. And as we rest here, to just give them a life update, that beautiful practice that Miho's dad, through Miho sharing with us, that her dad is now, he's not even here, but he taught us this today. So as we rest here for the next minute or so, give an update. And if there's any reason that that feels unavailable or doesn't resonate or even uncomfortable, you just rest and say to yourself, I know I am held. You'll hear my voice again in about 1 minute. And so if you're still updating, you start to complete the update. In your own way, say thank you. In your own language, say thank you. In your many languages, say thank you. And on the next inhale, breathe in, I know. And on the exhale, that I am held. And repeat that 2 more times. And then be aware of the breath, which is the bridge between the seen and the unseen. We can't hold the breath or touch it. We can't tangibly touch it, yet it touches us in the way that those who've gone before continue to reverberate within us and touch us with blessings, right? There's a lot of conversation about the other things we inherit, but here we are to remember the blessings. So you notice your breath and let that awareness of breath start to move into awareness of the physical body, of the tangible support beneath the physical body. And in your own time, you bring movement back into the body by wiggling fingers and toes or just moving head from left to right, side to side. And when you're ready, you can free write, you can journal, and there is no pressure to come back on camera. You can come back on camera, Miho, if you'd like to. But whenever you're ready and after you free write, if you just want to share anything um, that awakened for you in the practice or that you noticed, you can. And then we'll close with you just sharing where we can find you and your creations and your work and how we can access your coaching.
Mm, thank you, Octavia.
Thank you, Miho. And thank you again for sharing the lineage perspective you shared with us.